Good morning. It's the middle of March, and for sports fans, that means one thing. It's the most exciting time of the year for basketball, with both the NCAA and the Michigan High School Athletic Association holding their annual tournaments to select the best basketball teams in the nation and the state. This morning, we're going to talk about basketball with two people who have an interesting perspective on the game. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, my guests this morning have had a close-up view of the game of basketball for about a half a century. They're two of the very veteran basketball referees in the state of Michigan. This morning, it's a pleasure for me to welcome Gene Aho and David St. Onge to The Ryan Report. Guys, nice to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Thank you. For the audience, this is Gene and that's Dave. We're going to talk to both of them throughout the show today, but let's start, Gene, with you. I know you played basketball. You played in high school and college.
Yes, I did. I've been involved with basketball for 60 years now, and I was born and raised in National Mine. I played for National Mine. I went on to play at SUNY College. At that time, that was a 2-year college, and after 2 years of playing there, I transferred to Michigan Tech, and I played 2 years at Michigan Tech.
And how did you get involved with officiating? What brought you in?
Well, actually, I was a senior in college, and there was a class that was being offered for basketball officiating. You took the class and you took a test afterwards, and you were certified as a basketball official.
Okay. And Dave, I know you spent a lot of years in the insurance business, but how did you get involved with officiating? How did that all begin?
One of my best friends, Donald Perrin, a.k.a. Ducky, which everybody in the UP was aware of, asked me when I was 26 years old, let's get into reffing. There's no good refs around anymore. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But anyway, that's how it started, and we went into basketball back when I was 27. And it was all because of Donald Perrin.
Okay. And I think you both have worked with different partners through the years, probably?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You also worked some college games, didn't you? I think at Northern for a while.
Yeah.
Well, I was in the GLIAC for 34 years, and when we first started, we would do men and women, and that was kind of difficult, adjusting each day. So they had you pick a division, whether you wanted to do the women or the men, and unfortunately I selected the men and was very fortunate to be where I was.
Okay.
And I was a GLIAC official from 1988 to 2004, 15 years basically. But back then also we were two-man crews in both men and women, and to see what happens out there now, even with 3 people, you wonder how you even got through some of those games.
I can imagine.
Yes, very fast and physical. And
I don't think I asked the question, I didn't do the math, but how long have you been officiating?
this is my 47th year.
47th year. And Dave, how about you?
Just my 50th.
Oh, just your 50th. You know, every sport requires, physical fitness. But I know that the game of basketball requires a lot of endurance. And, if fans haven't done it, running up and down that floor over and over and over and over it takes a lot. How do guys do that when they get to be, let's just say, beyond retirement age?
Well, you got to be active all year round, basically, and you got to keep moving. Dave and I worked a game here a couple of weeks ago. It was Nagani at Westwood, and these kids on both teams just fly up and down the floor. I mean, they're very quick, and there's times when people work double headers. They work the JV and then go into the varsity game,
Right.
and that's really a tough thing to do when you get into a game like that.
And Dave, how do you stay in that shape? You just keep working at it, huh?
Well, fortunately, I've been doing like 50 or 60 games a year. And when I was a little younger, I used to play a lot of tennis. I do a lot of bowling and a lot of walking, and just try to watch your diet as best you can, or else if you're one step too slow, it doesn't help you or the kids or the fans.
And I assume, there are ways as officials you can kind of conserve some energy too, right? You're not all both running from one end of the floor to the other.
Right, yeah. Yeah, in a three-man operation, you've got a center official, you've got a trail in the lead, so when you've got three people out there, it really shortens up your movement needed to get into position. So,
But the main thing is getting in position.
yeah.
If you're in the right position, you have a much better opportunity to make the call the right way.
And a lot of it is instinct. You just have to know where you need to be.
It's like if you've seen a picture many times, when you take the photograph of a new one, it's like, I've seen this before, this is what it is, and you kind of rely on your instinct, like Gene said, and trying to be in the best physical shape you can, or maybe it's not the right thing to keep doing.
And you do, I assume it's probably good to work with partners as you do, and partners you're used to working with.
Oh, yes, yeah. I know where Dave is going to be all the time out there, and he probably knows where I'm going to be, and we know where our third person is going to be, and so that helps.
It's not rocket science, and everybody thinks it's easy, especially parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, and you have a 50% chance of getting it right. But the real reward is when somebody says after the game, boy, you guys did a great job.
Okay.
And that makes you feel a lot better than going home with a bad feeling.
And we know it doesn't always turn out that way, and we'll talk about that when we come back. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be back after this 2-minute break. And we're back talking with Gene Aho and Dave St. Onge, both veteran basketball officials, almost a century between them of experience. You were talking before the break, Dave, about, it's when somebody says after the game, nice game, you feel good. But it doesn't always go that way, does it? Certainly one of the tough things has to be fans don't always agree with the calls that officials make. How do you work with that? That's just part of the game, I guess.
Well, if you're not enthusiastic, you're probably not going to be there. There are a lot of people that come to the games just for the love of basketball, but most people that are in the gyms these days are acquainted with the teams very closely, and I think you have to, stretch it a little bit for these people. I think we all have been in a situation on things we love that we see in one way and it could be a different way. And with social media these days and transferring of emails and Instagrams and Facebook, sometimes you may get a raw deal, and I think you just have to try to keep as level-headed and be as fair as you can for the fans also.
Some questions that fans might ask. Is there such thing as a make-up call?
No.
Maybe you or your partner?
Absolutely not.
No. Okay.
There is no such thing, but there always will be in the stands.
Right.
But as an official, I don't think any official could ever even think of doing something like that. Like you'll hear one coach say, well, it's 4 fouls to 1 or 8 fouls to 1. And, we can read the scoreboard too. I guess our answer would be don't foul.
Yeah.
Plus you have to have the experience to really keep your head in the game and not be distracted by fans. At the start of each game, most schools present a very nice presentation on sportsmanship.
Right.
And when the ball goes up, sometimes people just do not listen to that.
What about, do you get cases where the coaches kind of work you a little bit or try to work you, either in a, not necessarily a negative way, even sometimes even just a friendly way?
Yeah, there's some people out there who are professionals at that.
Okay.
I think the younger officials would have a more difficult time with that, because if you're mine and Gene's age, most of the coaches know that no matter what they say to us, it's not going to make any difference. And you know, I applaud a coach for, you know, doing what they do, and coaching is not easy. And many times I've told the coaches, the communities are fortunate to have guys like you that want to put in the time to mold young men into adults and keep the programs going. It is a difficult time for coaches.
Plus, we've been very fortunate in that we have not had to eject anybody, any fans or anything. But we hear so much of that stuff happening where people have to be escorted out of the gym because they're too flagrant.
Too excited.
Yeah.
Vociferous.
Yes.
What about the technical foul? What, you know, how far do they have to go before you're going to call a technical foul on a coach, for example? Players, I think it's kind of something happening.
Well, right now what's in place is as an official, you're supposed to give a warning to a coach. And when you give a warning, it's not real serious where it would warrant a technical foul, but once you have a warning, he kind of gets put on probation type thing.
Okay. And you've called some technical fouls, I'm guessing, over a long
career.
Yes. What about on players? Does that happen very often?
Not really.
No.
It
does happen, but
people say that the kids have changed, but the athletes are still athletes, and when they're playing, they're mostly concerned about doing well for their team and their teammates. And I would say there's no difference now than there was 50 years ago. There might have been worse 50 years ago because the gyms were packed a little bit more, but the athletes nowadays are great kids. The Upper Peninsula is full of great athletes.
I'm sure you've both worked, and I recall earlier days in Ishpeming, you talk about gyms, where the gym was a little smaller, and if you were a fan, you were 3 feet from the floor, and it could get pretty excited there at times, couldn't it?
Ishpeming was rated pretty high at that point.
Okay, I've got some more questions. We'll get to them in just a minute. Back with more on today's show after we take this break. Well, as I said at the beginning, this is the month when basketball is really important. So many things going on, both at the state level and at the NCAA national tournaments. By the way, and we're talking with Gene Aho and Dave St. Ange, 2 veteran officials. You guys have any predictions on the NCAA tournament? You guys follow college basketball carefully?
It's wide open this year, more wide open than ever, I think, and anybody can win it. And Michigan State obviously has an opportunity to be in the Final Four, like probably 36 other teams, but hopefully Coach Izzo can get them through it.
And Michigan's doing pretty well.
Right.
oh yes, yeah.
What kind of special memories do you have? Are there any memories that really stick out in your mind?
I have one back in the late 1970s. The late John Argyle and I were working a basketball game in Trinary, and if you know Trinary's gym, the regular court is 84 feet long by 50 feet wide. Well, this is probably 64 feet at the most and 38 feet wide. So it's a small gym, and they got folding chairs on the side, both sides, and they got a stage on one end, and the wall is at the other, and then they've got an L-shaped balcony up there. But anyway, it was Ebenatrinary, and it was a wild game, back and forth. And it got into the fourth quarter, and there was a grandmother sitting on one of the folding chairs free throw line extended area, and there was a dead ball, and I noticed that she had her purse out in the playing floor area. So I went over there and asked her if she would remove her purse because it's on the playing floor. And she turned to me and said, out of blank did you see that? You can't see anything else out there. And she grabbed her purse and threw it, and she folded her arms like this, and that's the first time I had an inkling that it's best not to say anything to fans, players, or coaches under those conditions.
Dave, anything you recall? You have to mention the game.
Well, there's a lot of things I could recall, but I don't think I could repeat them here. And the thing that I remember most about officiating, I mean, other than a lot of tournament games that were close and down to the end and all the games every year, is the opportunity that I had to meet so many wonderful people. And that would start with my first partner, Donald Perrin, Peter Koski, Fran Lahillier, and Gene Aho. Okay. Three of them are my best friends, and one is deceased also, Donald Perrin. But one of my memories was I ran into Henry Opala, who just retired after 50 years from the Bessemer area, and he was AD in Marinesco at the time. Marinesco had a gym about half the size of this room, and the scores table stuck out on the floor where the three-point line was. Oh, and when you're running down the floor, you had to run around this table. So, you know, there's just so much done, and if I said anything that, and I missed anybody, and I'd like to pay a special tribute to Jim Matson, who is in a Marquette County Medical Care Facility. He was a coach, athletic director, principal, and official for many years in the UP, and he mentored a lot of people, a lot of young people.
We have less than a minute, and I should have brought this up sooner, but we do need more officials, don't we?
Oh, definitely, yep. You know, we seem to be just getting by. We get into trouble with numbers, and for some miraculous reason, we always get through it. But the core group in Marquette County, the older officials, will be retiring here in the next few years, and we just don't have the numbers in the pool to pick that up.
And one of the reasons it works is because we've got guys who've done it for 47
years. That is correct, yeah. And Dickinson County is in the same predicament as what we are. You know, they've got 4 or 5 people that's going to be retiring soon.
Okay. The thing about officiating, the young people, when they first come in, they get a little intimidated by the fans. And even the younger ages, the 7th or 8th grade and freshman JV, the fans are so intense that they the younger officials say, well, I don't want to put up with this for too long.
But we do need them, right?
Yes, sir.
I really want to thank you guys for coming in and talking this morning. It's been fun. It's just been enjoyable.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you. I'll be back with some other thoughts for you in just a couple of minutes. Well, today I'd like to share a TV6 high school basketball memory from the late 1960s. You know, at the time, the regional basketball tournament was held at Hedgecock Fieldhouse at NMU, and it was the premier sporting event in the Upper Peninsula. Teams from Class B, C, and D all came to Marquette to play semifinal games during the week and the finals on Saturday. The tournament drew coaches, officials, media, and fans from all over the Upper Peninsula, even if their teams weren't competing. It also brought in the top 4 teams in each class, which meant the Fieldhouse was filled to capacity for many of the games. I was the TV6 sports director at the time and featured tournament reports on the nightly sports through the week. But what I really wanted to do was cover at least the finals in each class live. Unfortunately, there was no way to get the signal to the station from the Hedgecock Fieldhouse. Now today it's common for us to broadcast from remote locations. They do it on the morning news every day and often on the evening news as well. We also do sporting events from NMU and Michigan Tech. But the technology back then was not what it is today. Our first attempt at bringing the complete game to the viewers involved the use of film, which was an interesting effort. Imagine shooting the game with a single film camera with me standing alongside the photographer providing the play-by-play commentary. Then taking the film back to the station to get it processed and put it on the air as a delayed broadcast. We also did some games on videotape, but none of those approaches were really satisfactory. So I kept bugging our engineers to come up with a way to do the games live. One day, someone came up with an idea that involved Northern Michigan University's public station, WNMU-TV. Now, of course, they were equipped to send a signal to their transmitter from the campus where their studios were located. That was how they got their local programming on the air. So we had a conversation with officials from NMU and came up with a plan to do it together. TV6 would provide most of the crew and cover the expenses, and both stations would air the broadcast simultaneously. TV6 would just pick up the WNMU signal off the air and rebroadcast it. It was probably in the 67-68 season, and I was set to do the play-by-play, but needed a good analyst to work with me. I asked Stan Albeck, NMU's head coach, who had done some sportscasting for TV6. He was interested, but not available. So he suggested his assistant coach, Glenn Brown, who turned out to be a great choice. I couldn't have asked for a better broadcast partner. He knew the game, the players, and how to fill the analyst's role. It was a real pleasure working with him, and we got to do it for a few years before I moved out of the sports job and had to turn it over to my successor. Doing the regional tournament live was a real plus for me and for TV6, but we couldn't have done it without the NMU partnership, which turned out to be a real win-win proposition for everyone involved, including the fans who got to see the games. I'll be back in a minute. That's our show for today. Many thanks to Gene Aho and Dave St. Ange for coming in to talk about basketball today. And you know, with a name like Ryan, we can't go without saying St. Patrick's Day is coming up, so the luck of the Irish to you. That's today's show. Join us again next week.